harm our communities. So that was really the reason. I was born and raised here in Durham. This is my home, and I don't want to see it history repeat itself with all this new development coming that is really serving a certain portion of the population, and it is displacing and disenfranchising another part of the population. So,
and just continue what I was talking to Tim about, and coming back to the financial planning. I know you have 2 kids along with your wife and everything. At what point have you started teaching them about financial planning? And also, what point have you started teaching them about some of this history? I mean, did you start teaching them at a very young age? I don't have any kids, but I do have my 2 nephews, and I know that my dad was showing them stuff like what a certain animal was in a certain plant. I want to say when they were 1, maybe even when they were toddlers.
Yeah, I mean, parenting is one of those things where there's no manual on how to do it. You just kind of do your best. And, I'd love to hear from some of the other parents if there are any others, with opinions on this. My kids are 8 and 9. My Justice, my son, will turn 10 on this Sunday. But, we try to, we're not talking about 401ks and savings and retirement yet, but they make allowance for doing chores. And we do try to hold them accountable to, having their word be their bond, and making sure that, when they say they're going to do something, they do it, and they get rewarded in kind. If they do the work, if they put the work in, they get the reward. So that's a big part that isn't necessarily like a financial literacy curriculum, but it's more just like an important life value to have your word be your bond, and do and work hard, and to not cut corners, and to we encourage them to find and follow their passions. And then when it comes to spending their money, definitely we make sure that they save some of it, and we as parents we have saving accounts for their college funds, and that's something that they're aware of. And whenever we put something into it, we let them know about that, so that they know they always have that on the table if it's where they want to go after high school. So, I don't think there's been anything really intense, but we try to instill the values, and we hope that those values will carry on into as they get older and get jobs. Like, that's going to be a different story. Definitely going to get more into it as they step out into the workforce as teenagers.
Definitely. So, Jeff, I don't know whether you have any kids, but if you do, at what point did you start teaching them about, Pierce was talking about, teaching them about just basic finances, not even just like you're teaching the kids that are in middle school, but just like the basic finances of collecting money for something that you've done as a reward for that chore?
Right. Honestly, I'm still a young guy, still a young man, and I don't have any kids. I'm 29, and so I don't have any kids, but I do have kids that I mentor outside of just groups of young people that I have to work with, contractually, that I'm obligated to work with them contractually. But I think it's along the same lines as Pierce. I think I got your name correct, brother. I don't want to mispronounce your name. As Pierce said about, how he parents his children, how he gives them responsibility and he gives them allowances for them, and how he communicates value. And I think that's what it's about. And I think that's really where it starts. I think it starts by showing your young people, whether they're your sons, your daughters, or your aunts, your nephews or nieces, showing them that they have value, and that there's something on the inside of them that is valuable, and beginning to identify that thing, and now showing them how to monetize that thing.
Yeah, that's definitely very true, and we have to do more of that, find ways to monetize some of these skill sets, like you were talking about with the folks that were doing the stuff with the shoes and with the bow ties, and I'm sure there's some other examples that you can give of folks that are monetizing their skill sets and things of that nature. Now, one of the other things that we know that is very important, and we actually talked about it at the beginning of the show before we got to the guests and everything, was, and I wanted to hear from all of you because I know that it's important every place. We got 2 from Durham and 1 from New York, is the whole concept of midterm elections. Now, I had a very scary thought earlier today. I actually went and did my early voting and was glad to get that out of the way. But then I stopped by and I know this isn't good because it's one of those cases of like Wonder Bread, bad places that you shouldn't be going to, but I stopped at a junk food place to get some junk food. Well, actually, it was just a colada, still way too much sugar, but I know I should have known better. But when I was there, I was talking to a young gentleman. There was two folks. There's a young lady that's a young manager. She's probably like 20, 21, and the guy is probably in that same age range. And I told him I just come back from early voting, and he was basically like, well, it's not important. I don't know why I need to go vote. It's not important. So I'm sure that you hear this, both of you, or all three of you probably hear this when you're talking to your young folks. What do you tell them to get them to understand the importance of early voting and how these midterm elections are just as important, and actually how local elections are important? Because, like I said, she ran for mayor, but I'm not just thinking about mayor, I'm thinking about even the soil position, that's important, and the district house jobs are important and things of that nature. But so when you hear these folks that are young that aren't wanting to vote, how do you get them motivated to vote? And this is for all three of you.
Well, I mean, I definitely like to take a stab at that, man. I think it's, showing young people that, or encouraging them and empowering them to change their perspective on voting, and really just sharing with them that, listen, that you can be a part of rewriting the history of our nation, and that you have a say in that, and that one act can change that, can contribute to that. And so I think that rather than being a spectator, I think you need to be an active participator and say, hey, look, you're not necessarily like what 45 that we have in is something that we allowed. And I think, again, just sharing that with young people and sharing, hey, like, listen, we all have to be accountable here, because your every vote counts. It doesn't matter. Every single vote counts. And so if your vote is missing, the majority of young people's votes are missing, that's an issue. And so I think, again, encouraging them to see that, hey, listen, you can be an active participant in voting, and you can be an active participant in, rewriting the narrative of our nation. Showing them the purpose, giving them the why, right? And I think a lot of times we tell young people, do this, do that, but you don't give them the world of the why. And so I think providing our young people, educating our young people on the why of voting, I think then we'll probably might see a buy-in on the voting.
And Pierce and Kim, how would you add to that? Because like I said, I know that a lot of times, even our young people that are like the ages of in their 20s and their 30s are usually involved in a lot of these activist kind of like causes, whether that's Me Too, whether that's Black Lives Matter, whether that's this or that. But even some of them, when you talk to them, don't necessarily want to buy into the political process. They want to buy into the activism process, but not necessarily the political process. So how do you get them to understand that the two are connected and have been connected throughout history?
Oh,
well,
man.
I think. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
you go ahead.
Go ahead, Pierce. Because, well, okay. I'll just come out and say I don't really get in a lot of the voting discussions, and I don't try to encourage people to go one way or the other. And as for myself, depending on the election, depending on the politicians, because I'm gonna do the research on the election and what I'm voting for, who the politicians are, and all of this. I'm not concerned about parties or nothing. It's like Pierce said earlier, it's a lot of things that are controlled by policy and all this other stuff. So I don't encourage either way, and I do my own research and make my own decision from election to election. And in the process of voting, and in the process of seeing the results of a vote, and then seeing that vote translate into policy and translate into change or whatever, it depends on your perspective, I guess, because even when I was talking about the school system earlier and not really knowing anything but the information and the statistics, but when you're working in it, you see it firsthand happening. One thing you learn is that the school board has been voted on the whole 20 years I've been in Durham, so they done voted on the school board time and time again, but the curriculum in the school never changes. So I got more problem with the curriculum in the school that shapes the mind of the child than I have interest in the politician that's going to talk about it for 20 years, because the curriculum never changes. but we vote people in and out of the school board all the time. But if the curriculum doesn't change, it doesn't matter who I vote into the school board. So that's what I have. That's why I don't get involved in the voting discussion too much, because what are you really voting for, and what is the change that you really want to see? And for me, I always want to see the change that take place inside of a person more than I want to see what happens outside. So to change the inside of the person that's being shaped by the public school system, you have to change the curriculum and not just the person that sit on the board. So that's how I kind of look at voting and all of that. So I have my own personal views. So I don't get in a lot of discussions about it. I don't try to encourage one way or the other. You have to research within yourself, what are you voting for, and what do you really want your vote to count for? And if your vote counts, then vote. And if your vote don't count, don't vote. So pretty much when I vote, I'm in a room where I get to raise my hand and I actually get to see my vote count, even if it's just who going to order pizza. I'll vote for that before I worry about voting for the school board and the curriculum never changes.
So what are you going to say to that, Pierce?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm really feeling what you said. I think that this is kind of an indirect answer to the question. I just have some thoughts I want to share. First of all,
break it down, please.
There's a whole generation, I think, of our elders that when a young person says they don't vote, they just get mad. They're like, well, if you can't vote, you can't complain. If you don't vote, like it's all their fault that the world we inherited is all messed up because some kid who just turned 18 or 22 don't vote. Nah, the reason the situation is messed up is because of generations of people who've been voted into power, and for people that haven't been voted into power but are just kind of working within these structures that are messing up our community. So when I meet a kid who says, I don't vote, I ask them what they care about. It's more about what's going on in their minds and their hearts and the change that they want to see. And sometimes there's a way to achieve those goals through voting, but sometimes there isn't. Sometimes, there are different social factors that impact, and there might be something else I could put them on. I might be like, come through Black Space. That's how we could address that particular issue. Or, holler at this community organization. Go holler at the Nation of Islam. Go holler at the, whatever organization that's doing different kind of community work that can serve the change that they want to see in the world. Because as long as they're involved in something, it doesn't have to be electoral politics, And I get frustrated when our elders kind of put it all in that arena, because what it does is it alienates them. As soon as you tell a kid like, oh, then you can't complain, then they're not trying to hear anything you got to say after that. That's not how you encourage someone to be involved. You got to find them where they are and support them in the way that they want to kind of move things forward. And so, because here's my last thing I want to say about that. The other problem with politicians and politics in general is that people come around during election year. You don't see them the rest of the year. I ain't seen you 6 months ago. I'm not going to see you 3 months from now as soon as you got my vote that you needed so bad. And so people are rightfully skeptical of the political system. So, when I was running for mayor, if I met with somebody who felt some kind of way about politics or politricks, as some folks in different Black communities say, I'm like, I'll be here regardless, whether I'm in office or not. If I make it in, you're going to see me. If I don't, guess what? You're going to see me. And let's work on building that relationship. And maybe maybe they might not vote for me this year, but if they see that I'm a man of integrity and a man of my word and a man who shows up where he says he's going to be when he says he's going to be there, just like I tell my kids to do, then, they'll trust and we'll build towards 2022 or 2032. It's not about, but so many people, they just show up when they need something from you, but they're not there to provide anything for you after the fact. So I empathize with people who aren't into elections for that reason.
I really appreciate that perspective, Pierce, and that encouraged me a whole lot in that perspective. And I also just, just because you brought it up, just give you a nice little shout out for having the courage